Hi, I'm Larry, and welcome to my studio. Today's lesson is going to be in watercolor, and I thought I would do some things that I had originally planned to do, which was some basic techniques and some tips that we all could use, especially when we're learning. So today what I'm going to be doing is showing you how watercolor works in different situations, like wet on dry paper and then wet into wet, which is you wet the paper and then you add wet paint to it. These are very important aspects of watercolor because you will use them quite often in the way you paint. You can use them both in the same painting. It's quite typical. It just depends on the situation that you're in and what you need to do. So my biggest recommendation to you is to watch what your paint does. The more you can see what your paint is doing, the better you will know what it does when you need it to do it what you want it to do. Most people tend to want to fight the watercolor, and what I tell my students in class is if you fight the watercolor will win. It knows itself better than you do. So learn to become its partner and things will go a lot smoother. Be observant. Let me reset this and I'll be back in just a second. Thank you. Okay, the first thing I'm going to show you is what is called wet on dry. What it means is that the paper is going to be dry, the wet will be on my brush. When I say wet, I don't mean dripping. Okay, it's not dripping. What you want to do is you want to wet your brush and then lightly dry it off on both sides, or if you're using a round brush, just dry it off. It should just be a damp brush. You'll be picking up more water on your palette. And for the demonstration, it doesn't really matter what colors you're using. So I'll just pick up some blue here. Now my paper is dry, so when I put the paint down, it really doesn't go anyplace. It just sits there. Observe your paint. See what it's doing. The more you understand what it's doing, the easier it's going to be to paint watercolor. It can sometimes feel like you're a beginner skier on a triple diamond run when you're painting with watercolor and you don't know what it's doing. So that's why I say observe it. Now I'm just rinsing my brush right now, lightly drying it off, and then I'm just going to take my damp brush and come right here at the very bottom of this and touch it with that damp brush. And see how it's starting to run? That's a good thing. That's what I'm trying to get it to do. So I'm just going to come in with a little more water and work it down. But notice how when it gets to the dry part, it stops. That's what you need to be looking for. I'm going to take a different color. I'm going to pick up, this is my alizarin crimson, and I'm going to paint this here. Now, one of the things that you will see as you paint in watercolor is something called a bloom. A bloom is when you have wet paint and it touches into, let's see if this will work, touches into a drying paint. And that drying paint will start to bloom. It will also bloom if you hit it with water. But watch how the paint moves, how it spreads out, and how it comes to a stop when it reaches a dry area. Now you can use this to blend. You make different colors like I've done here with the alizarin crimson. Just come in and just kind of touch with the alizarin crimson. I'm in my back room and it's a little warmer in here today, and so the paint is drying pretty quick. That was just water that I put on there. Now if you want it to stay like there, what you need to do is just, this is my brush, I've just dried it off, and I'm just going to touch to the bottom here, just suck up some of that water. Otherwise it will start to fill up and gravity will help it escape. So you have to watch that. You can make really interesting clouds and things with this technique too. This is just water. I'm just wetting this space. And pick up some more blue. It doesn't matter. And then just tap into that wet space and let the paint do its own thing. It creates some really interesting patterns all on its own. Okay, it's kind of getting me off track here. Do that. This is called wet into wet, and I'll do a bit over here. So again, I'm going to wet the paper. I'll make it a little bit bigger this time. I'm by myself and I'm forgetting that I need to paint it big enough so you guys can see it. Let's switch colors. I'm going to pick up some green this time. Now, some of the times, like if I want to do, ooh, there it goes, like a background that's just got some leaves, I can wet it and then just put down, just touching it. I'm just barely touching it and letting the paint just do its own thing. Let me pick up different color here. I think this is some cad red light. Wet into wet. Wet paint, wet paper. Now, you use these things interchangeably. You know, you may want to, like, over here, say you want to make an edge on something. And so I'm just going to pick up some, I think this is my indigo, and just forgot to dry it off and it was too wet. Okay, so I'm just going to like put that indigo down there, and I don't want a hard line. So now I'm going to come back and I'm going to rinse my brush and dry it off and come in. I'm just touching the top edge with a damp brush, and that's going to soften the edge of that. Soft edges are usually what you're trying to go for, especially if they're in the background, to create distance. Hard edges tend to draw your eye. Okay, so now I've got a soft edge. Or say I'm doing a leaf. Picking up some paint here. And I put the shape of the leaf in. Want to rinse my brush, and now I want I want to blend these two areas together. So I'm just going to take a damp brush and just soften that edge, wet the inside of that, and then the paint comes together. So those are just a few of the ways I would use that technique in a painting. You can use it on a big scale or a small scale. Let's do that leaf again, but this time I'm going to paint with just water. You won't be able to see this until I get some color down there. So this is just water, and I'll pick up some, how about some orange this time? And then just come in and touch. See here, I missed painting the paper with water, so it's avoiding that area. I'm going to leave it. You know, sometimes, the late Bob Ross would call them a happy accident. And as artists, they sometimes really work out to your advantage. I just picked up a different color. This is, what is this? This is phthalo violet, I believe. And just touch that into there. See all of these, you can see it up here in the green too, where you've got this fine edge that just kind of. Another thing I like about watercolor is that you can turn it and let the paints run together. But don't be afraid to try this. You think, oh, I don't want to waste the paper. Well, get some cheaper paper if that's your problem. But test this. You aren't going to know how your paint's going to work until you play with it. There's a little bit of green. Look at how it spreads. Those are blooms. Those are fun. Unless you don't want them. And then you have to know, how did I do that? Well, you've touched wet paint into a drying area, and that's how you get a bloom. So practice these things. They also make cards. You can take and make a flower. I'm just going to come in here and just paint with water. Pick up some color. I'm not sure what color that is. But practice. Make your cards. And then send them off to your friends. And you'll never have to look at them again. But you get the practice. I cannot emphasize that enough when you are learning, is to practice your strokes. Take that time. I'll show you how to do that on dry paper here in a second. With dry, you can just make an edge. And then just take water and pull it down. Practice these things. I'm going to reset the camera and show you how to put this into a painting. I'll be right back. Okay, I've drawn a couple of vases on my paper here. One I will be doing the wet on dry, and then the other one I will be doing wet into wet, so you can see the difference. So this one, I'm going to start on the wet on dry, and I'm going to pick up some phthalo blue for my vase. And let me stay out of the picture here. And just come across. You might want to, paint this in sections, especially if it's a hot day or you're working near an open window, because the paint will dry. Some of these paints are called staining paints. Phthalo blue, all of the phthalo colors are in that category. So I'm just put that much down, and I'm just wetting my brush, and I'm just going to touch and pull. Just wet the paper, let the paint move. You control it this way. You get to tell it, okay, I want you to stop here. Whereas on the other wet into wet, now see, I like what's going on there. I'm just going to leave that. Wet into wet, you put it down, and the only control you have is where you've left the paper dry. So come here. This is more of the phthalo color. Okay, I've got phthalo color on there. Now I can take and turn this. Remember, see, I've got two blocks here. This is a 4-inch block, that's a 2-inch block, and I use those. You want to have a little bit of elevation so that gravity's going to help you on this. Just come in and just wet the areas that I want. Blooms forming there. Now I freehanded both of these vases, and so they're not quite perfect, but that's all right. Now if you want to put like a stem for a rose in, where it's wet, it's going to spread. Oh, didn't get that back part, but that's all right. Make it kind of a sad rose. Add suggest some leaves. Now that I'm back into wet because I've wet that paper to make it move. Here's a nice bloom going here. All right, on this side, I'm going to wet the whole thing. This is just water. I want my paper kind of wet. When you work with watercolor, the wetter your paper is, the more movement you're going to get out of your paint. So if it's not real wet, it's not going to move a lot. You have a little more control over it. If it's real wet like this, it's liable to go all over the place. So it won't go outside unless I've got a drip or something I did not see. But here is wet into wet. So wet paint, wet paper. I'm just going to let this run and just add more when I think it's starting to slow down. Gonna watch this drip here. You can also take the corner of your paper towel and suck it up. This is what makes watercolor fun. Is it a challenge? Yes. And I encourage my students, when they're working with watercolor, not to go, oh, it's so difficult, it's so hard. Because a lot of people will tell you that, oh, watercolor is so hard. Well, no, it's a challenge. A lot of things in life are a challenge. But if you understand what it's doing, make this one orange. Go with the blue. This is just wet on dry. I'm not going to do anything else. Just suggest some petals that have fallen. But there you have it. This one is wet on dry. The paper was dry. The watercolor was wet, and I moved it with just water. Over here, I wet the whole vase, and then just let the paint do what it wanted to do. So until next time, if you need some more information, you can go to my blog spot. Information will be at the bottom here or at the end. And you'll find links also in my Instagram page. So remember, we're all in this together. Be calm, call your friends, call your family. Most of all, keep painting, and I hope one day to see you in class again. Thank you for watching.